Good evening, everyone. Hope you're having a good night. Let's get back into Wolves on the Westwind. Okay. If you missed it last time, I had finally got the tooth we need to get the weapon. I got the thingy I need to help with the monster that is hunting me and a few others. We also met an elf. And I gave up some of my power for this little trinket, so we're gonna hope that doesn't come and bite me in the butt later. Alright. On your return from the Alkenbelsen with the demon's tooth, the fiend attacks the Keen Wolf once again, and a terrible truth is learned. Chapter Fatal Flaw. An interruption to the silence scratches at your ears as you sit in silent existential pondering. You still cannot quite believe it. All of a sudden, everything is so different, and you're still not entirely sure you understand why. As the sound comes on stronger, you become distracted and shake yourself out of your thoughts. You aren't sure where it is coming from, but there is music playing somewhere. It's a strange music. Strangely familiar, and yet impossibly different from anything you have heard before. It echoes through your mind with an otherworldly power. A melody of peace and tranquility, but one that is inherently sad and lonely. It seems strangely fitting for how different your life now suddenly is. It makes you feel a little bitter if you're honest with yourself. Nadim. You blink and suddenly he is standing in front of you, looking down at you with a grave expression. It all comes flooding back then, everything that happened. Everything that took you to Thorwall, to Isafessel, and to the Keen Wolf. Why are you doing this to me? Did I do something? Did something happen that I don't remember? What? The grave expression holds for a moment, but then it is as if he can no longer keep a straight face. His eyes flash gold, and a cruel smile crosses his face, and then he sighs and sits down next to you. Your skin immediately begins to crawl, and all you want to do is run as far away as you possibly can. But you can't. You are frozen to the spot, not even able to turn away so that you can't see that horrible visage. I am not doing anything, Nadim. All of this you have brought upon yourself. You glance up as the air of the atrium is filled with low rolling thunder. Your head pounds as the thunder spills out into the deep disembodied chuckle that shakes you to your very core. But I do enjoy it. I enjoy it very much. In an instant the shade is gone, and any pretense you might have that this is real is gone with it. A hole in the world opens up in front of you right before your eyes. A tear in space and time that pulls itself wider and wider until you can see through it like a window. And there he is again, standing as if before you and shaking his head with a look of disappointment on his face. I am sorry, Nadim. I am. We can no longer keep attempting to do the same thing over and over again. It would be madness. You shudder and swallow down the feeling of pain and anger that's growing in your mind. It wasn't like that. You shake your head, even as a tear rolls down your cheek. He did... what? Creek? What? Cheek! He did what he had to do. Oh, is that right? Or is it that you do not want to accept the truth? Very well, there are other distractions to plunder through. As quickly as the tear before you opened, now it knits itself closed again, snapping shut and making you jump. Around you, you hear cries and pounding feet that don't belong in this peaceful communal garden. And then there are more tears everywhere you look. Tears, sorry. Each peers into a different reality, and each fills your heart with sorrow. Estrid standing in her father's hall with her arms crossed, looking as disappointed, as hurt as you've ever seen her. Maidner sitting alone in his quarters, looking despondently at the journal on his desk, destitute and rejected. Swafnil screaming in unfathomable rage at something you cannot see, swinging punches left and right. Darksong, you think, though not as you know her. Her skin is mottled and pale gray, her face is gaunt and covered in thousands of tiny scars. Her eyes, for all their harrowing intensity, are also empty and dead and hopeless. Choose carefully, Nadim. Which of them will you destroy next? Ignore the taunting voice ringing in your ears. You look deeper into the tear through which you see Darksong. And just like that, you are in the deep heart of a dark forest. It is deathly quiet. There's no wind, no rustle of small animals, no more music or life. Just you and this hollow elf, bathed in pale moonlight, standing opposite each other silently. Darksong, is that you? As soon as you say her name, her moniker, whatever it is, her head cocks and her eyes focus on you. She doesn't say anything, but that she responds tells you, at least, that you're right. This is Darksong, at least it's some version of her. Very slowly, very carefully, you raise your hand towards her. Inside of a single moment, she freezes in place, her eyes locked onto your hand. But at the same time, her knuckles turn white as she presses her fingers far too tightly into her palms. And your ears fill with a heart-wrenching, soul-destroying scream that reverberates through your entire body. It's disjointed, broken, dissonant, dark, and destructive. It seems to shatter everything around you, pushing you backwards as you're forced to cover your ears. It lasts forever. On and on and on it goes, ripping everything down until there is nothing left. And then the moment has passed, and you look up to find you are still in that nighttime forest. But any trace of Darksong has vanished, and a low rumble echoes through the air somewhere up above. Through the treetops, you can see that the sky is midnight blue and crystal clear. The stars are shining brightly. But that rumble bursts into your mind and scrapes at you in the same familiar way the fiend's thunder always has. You ball your eyes shut, gritting your teeth and groaning as if you can resist the horrible pounding in your head. You're brought to your knees as the world starts to spin with everything shaking and falling around you. And a snap, your head is clear once more, and for the briefest of brief moments, you think you might be free. But when you open up your eyes, some new chaos has surrounded you. Shouting voices, burning fires, Thorwallian raiders everywhere you look. You feel sharp pain in both of your legs, which stops you from getting to your feet again. Worse than that, as you look at your lap, you see that your hands are bound together by thick rope. A small crowd is laughing and jeering, while further away other warriors run around, going about their raid. But as you look over to the crowd in a wild panic, a familiar face makes its way through the raiders towards you. Rolver, carrying his terrible axe, rushes past those closest to you, looking down at you with a look of complete disdain. Is this still part of the dream? Your words are raspy, and speaking just even a little makes your throat very sore. You don't even recognize the voice that escapes your throat. Orville ignores you, glancing back towards the crowd and then at you again quickly. He doesn't seem to be able to stand still. Back and forth he paces, tapping his fingers against the handle of his axe over and over and over again. His eyes are dark, full of some half-formed plan of malcontent. And the way he is looking at you makes you think you are the center of it. Don't just stand there, Orber. Help me. The corner of his lips twitch and twists into a smile as he looks at you again. It's not disdain on his face anymore, but darkening determination, as if he is psyching himself up for something. Then through the crowd breaks Gunnar, racing after his friend and raiding partner. Orlver. His voice is cracked as well. The smoke from all the fire is destroying all of your throats. No, Orlver, not like this. Orlver barely glances at him as the rest of the crowd jeer and shout Orlver's name. He grits his teeth and taps his fingers on the axe handle again, still pacing back and forth. And then all of a sudden he stops and looks at you one more time. The sky is thick and black with smoke and ash, but somewhere above you hear thunder starting to bubble up. They will fear me. Your attention snaps back to Orlver as he starts stalking towards you menacingly. They will. With a flash of phantom pain that washes over your whole body, your eyes snap open and you gasp for air. You scramble up, scraping a hand across the wooden plank deck at the keen wolf as you stand. Someone crashes into you in an instant, knocking you back to the floor. Your head stings as you smack it against the deck. What is happening? Where are you? Why is your face slick with sweat and salt water? A flash of lightning lights up the sky and thunder roars in your ears, and it all comes tumbling back. Traveling back towards the Gulf of Prem, you've been hit by another big storm out of the northwest. You were in the middle of securing the lifelines when you felt the now familiar pang in your chest. He hadn't even heard the first roar of magical thunder underneath the natural ferocity of the very real storm. As parts of the strange vivid nightmare start to come back to you, you look around for Darksong. You don't remember where she came up onto the deck to help weather the storm. The crew and her still weren't getting along. More likely, she was trying to keep her head down and stay out of the way somewhere below deck. Or she's already been swept overboard while she was unconscious. Now at least, it's nigh on impossible to see through the darkness and the spray. Outlander! You turn to see Estrid hunching down as she tries to run through the wind and rain to reach you. You're alive. We need the tooth. You nod, desperately trying to keep your footing while you scramble to take the demon's tooth from your pouch. Your clothes are heavy and you feel immensely tired. The tooth slips from your hand as you grasp it, turning it around in your hands. And that is when you realize you have absolutely no idea how to use it. You clutch the tooth as tightly as you can for a few moments while you think, and then you nod decisively. As another bubble of thunder ripples through the keen wolf, you hold the tooth as tightly as you can to your chest. Help us, Travia, help us. Protect us from this fiend. The thunder cracks across the sky and your head spins as the hole opens deep in your chest. The sound rolls into bellowing joy. It's an unimaginably cruel laughter that makes it hurt to think. I did ask you, do you really think some trinket trophy can save you? You snap it to look towards the voice, which comes from directly behind you. It rings clear and true, as if the speaker was directly next to you, and as if there was no storm at all. Gleaming with a pale, sickly light in the darkness, the shade from your memory stands quite calmly. The crew that run around their attempts to steer the ship ignore it completely, but it only seems to have eyes for you anyway. It is already far too late for that. You and your friends are already doomed. What? You glance back down at the artifact clutched in your hands, now soaked and gleaming in the rain. Your mind is racing and your heart is pounding. Perhaps it is lying. Perhaps there are a dozen other possible ways to use the weapon. How would you know? Who would know? Or perhaps painfully, the fiend is telling the truth. No one sleeps. No one can. The storm does not let up until morning, and when the sun rises, the clouds are still dark. Those not marked by the fiend are focused completely on making sure the Keen Wolf survives. Some minor repairs have to be made. The sails are damaged and the rudder is broken. Thankfully, no one was lost to the storm, but morale is low nonetheless. Those who are marked by the fiend all feel it in its entirety, even after hours have passed. Not only are you physically tired, but you feel as though your soul has been ripped out of your body. You don't wish to speak or be spoken to. You don't even wish to be seen, though you know there is no escaping it. And every time you look northwards towards the Gulf of Prem, you are overwhelmed by a subtle gnawing dread. All you want to do is put as much water between you and that feeling as you possibly can. It is, categorically, the worst you have ever felt. Spite and anger at what the fiend showed you in its attack that you have not had to process yet. The uneasiness that has not let up, not really at least, since you embarked on your dangerous quest. You find yourself asking whether it's all worth it. Whether it's not just easier to run. Most of all, you are left wondering all the more whether your choice in the depths of the alchemy fizzle was even worth it. The initial ache, then drain of whatever it was the creature did to you has passed, but you know you will never be the same again. And when you needed it, Demon's Tooth didn't even seem to work. In fact, the demonoid seemed to rip straight through any defense it might have offered, stronger than ever before. Once the storm had passed, you and Estrid once more found yourself with no work to do. On this occasion, you get the sense it has little to do with how much work is actually available. From the dark looks of your fellow crewmates, you think it's more likely they want as little to do with you as possible. Instead, you lean on the guardrail at the front of the ship, looking out eastwards towards the southern Thorwall coast. Neither of you can find it within your hearts to actually say anything. That is, until there's a loud commotion from the stairs behind you. George leads a great number of the crew onto deck, almost all of them, actually. They spill out around you in a large crowd, talking amongst themselves and giving you dirty looks. Swaffield and Maidner make their way through the crowd towards you. They both look as tired as you feel, but neither of their moods have improved since you last saw them. I am too tired for something like this at the moment. We have little choice, I'm afraid, Outlander. We might have been the targets of last night's attack, but the rest of the Odojasko was affected too. They want answers. I can't really blame them. We need to start thinking about how to put an end to this. Gunnar walks down from the quarterdeck, exchanging quiet, discerning words with George. You see Darksong there too, leaning on the quarterdeck railing and not following Gunnar down the stairs. She seems content to stay above, away from the action, to watch from a safe distance. It isn't long before it becomes more than just milling about. It is George that walks through the crowd and to knock loudly on Orlver's door. Orlver, get out here. Calmly, George, I told you. Calmly. Gunnar looks tense and nervous, staring George down as the raider paces outside of Orlver's door. The rest of the crew go quiet too, whether to see whether Orville will emerge or in the expectation that he won't. Some time passes with no reply from the quarter, so George walks up to the door and slams his fist against it. Orville, we need... He cuts off as the door swings open with so much force that George almost falls inside. Orville looks down on him with his usual stony expression from the darkness of his room. Except it isn't quite the usual stony expression. It's clear that Orville hasn't slept properly for several days and may well have barely eaten. As he steps out onto the deck, barely so much as looking at George, he pushes past him, you can tell. He has the same heavy look in his eyes that you'd seen on Estrid and now Maidner and Swafnil too. This is a very haunted man. What's the meaning of this? His voice is raspy too, raspier than usual. He is not looking after himself. We need to talk, Orville. This fiend that chases you has attacked the Keen Wolf twice now, and quickly too. Last night it robbed us of aid we should have been able to use. He sweeps an accusatory finger across you and those that stand next to you. For the Odasco, taken by some dark magic while the ship was nearly destroyed in the storm, and the elf. We risk our honor, letting them get away with what they did in Gelsinger. Now we've risked our lives too, at the Alkenfelsen and crossing back into the Gulf of Prem. All for a treasure that didn't work against the monster. We don't know that it doesn't work. As you speak up over George, the entire crew on deck turns to face you. We didn't have time to try everything, and it isn't as though we were given instructions on how to use it. With time and study, perhaps we can get it right. We may not have time, Outlander. George quickly turns back to Orville, who stands on the opposite side of the crowd to you with his fingers tapping his arm. You are a hetman, Orville. It is time you gave us some direction. What do we do? Orville says nothing, sweeping his eyes over his people as he considers George's question. Quietly, he pads over to the ship's port side, looking north over the Gulf and the islands of the Oyster Stones. Eventually, the silence is too much to bear. If we do nothing, this will just get worse, Orville. If we do not have the time or the knowledge to do the demon's tooth, let's just attack. At least we may try to finish this before it drives us mad. Neither George nor Orville look best pleased that you interrupted their moment. Indeed, you once again find the whole crew looking at you as though they did not expect you to speak. But no one argues your point. Once more, quiet falls on the deck, and all eyes look to Orville for answers. He's completely unperturbed by this, looking quite calmly, as far as you can tell, out into the ocean. Long moments pass before he turns to Gunnar. Supplies. Gunnar looks at him for a moment longer before he glances at George and back again. Enough to make the coast to the east relative ease and to make it into the Gulf if we ration. But if another storm hits and we are blown off that course, we will have to sail west again for more supplies. Well then, it seems clear. We must stay clear of the storms until we find supplies. A little bit of a whisper goes up from the crew at that. A few heavy breaths and sighs, even small groans. Oliver now turns to Swafnil, who has been waiting patiently with her arms crossed. You were told we may well have to raid on our return from Gelsinger. Are we ready? Of course we are. Then that's what we will do. Sail for Nostria. Orville starts to make his way back to his quarters, only stopping when he sees that the crew has not moved at all. George stood watching Orville closely, his hands clenched tightly together. You're running. Orville stops short in front of George, looking down at him with the darkest of expressions once again. You see his fingers twitch before he clenches his fist tight. I'm putting my Odasco before some wild goose chase for a creature that can end us with or without the demon's tooth. It cannot beat us to Nostria if we do not stop on the way. There, we will get some more supplies, make sure we are ready to fight, let loose a little. Then we can head north, and our glorious hunters over there can waste their time and their lives to their heart's content. Is that to your satisfaction, George? George? That is George. You aren't the only one who knows that Orville puts the onus on you to find the fiend. But everyone is so taken by Orville's sudden anger and threat that no one dares bring it up. George spends a few more moments sizing himself up against Orville before he taunts and turns away. The crowd follows them, and as soon as there is a clear path, Orville growls and powers away to his quarters. The rest of you, Estrid, Maidner, and Swafnil, all stay where you are as the crowd disperses. Dark suddenly makes your way towards you from the quarterdeck, now that there aren't so many people in the way. Part of you is glad that you aren't just racing towards almost certain death. Part of you is glad to be sailing even further away from the threat you don't wish to face. The rest of you is filled with the same subtly wielding dread. Was this a horrible mistake? Quite possibly. You said everything you could have said, Outlander. Even if it is true that we could be better prepared. You know that Esther doesn't reply, and turn to find her completely lost in thought. And when she sees that you're waiting on her, she blinks and quickly turns away to look at the sea. She shakes her head and tightens her grip on the railing, stifling a sigh. A bad sign from Estrid. That man will be the doom of us all. None of you respond. None of you can. But you know you aren't the only one with a growing suspicion that she's right. Act 3. Yay! We got to Act 3! You know what? I want to talk to Estrid. That's what we're going to say first. Now we're going to talk to Estrid. Shaken by recent events aboard the Keen Wolf, Estrid seeks you to talk. Chapter: A Moment of Doubt. There is a loud wooden yawn as the helmsperson adjusts the Keen Wolf's heading. You feel the deck tip underneath your feet and lean on the mop you have been using to scrub it. You echo the Keen Wolf's complaints with a yawn of your own as you adjust your weight so that you don't fall. You were hoping the work would give you somewhat of a distraction. Morale is low after the discovery that the fiend is not as easy to stave off as hoped with the demon's tooth. It has left many, yourself included, unsure of what the future holds. But you do now know what exactly the fiend holds over you, even if you are not quite ready to face it. Outlander, you hear Estrid calling from towards the stairs and stop your mopping again to turn and greet her. She looks as tired as you feel, and just as troubled too. Good morning. Is it? She sets herself against the guardrail, crossing her arms as she looks around the quiet deck. I don't know about you, Outlander, but I can no longer wait for this to all be over with. Oh, I definitely agree with you. Estrid uses one hand to rub her head before she crosses her arms again, giving you a long, meaningful look. I feel very torn. It is as though I know that we must face the fiend, and most of me still wants to. But also, the closer we come, the more it shows me, the more I wish to flee as far as I can. It is playing heavily on my mind. And I found no way of stopping it. Estrid unfurls herself to put her hand through her hair as you slowly get back to work. For a few moments, she just watches you scrub viciously at the deck. May I ask you, Outlander, what is the fiend tormenting you with? It only takes that one simple question for the memories to resurface. It reminded me of how my time at the Pentagram Academy came to an end. You know as soon as you say that you can't bring yourself to go into tremendous detail. It wasn't under the best of circumstances. I was trying to put it all behind me when I came to Elisfeld, but the fiend won't let me. Estrid slowly nods along, listening intently to everything you can say. And it's not quite the same for all of us, then. As you continue mopping, she slowly turns herself around to look towards the west. Honestly, I don't even remember whether the fiend has stretched it up, or whether it was already on my mind. Sometimes it has felt as though I cannot be the leader I am expected to be. But it runs deeper than that. I think my father always expected me to learn over time, or to come to my senses, in a way. About the ways in which a het person is supposed to lead by example. But the more time I spend here, the more I realize I have principles and convictions that simply don't work. Sometimes it feels as though I would have been better off if I hadn't been born a Thorwaller at all. Estrid pauses for a moment, bows her head, and then sighs deeply. I can't lead people who expect me to be someone I'm not. It would be disruptive, irresponsible. I don't want to do that, to them or to myself. What about you do you think isn't Thorwallian enough? Estrid sighs loudly and shakes her head, rubbing it as though she has an intense headache. It is difficult to put into words. Small things. I don't believe we can hope to overwhelm every opponent we face with sheer strength. I don't know that faith in the gods alone can turn the tide of a battle or a problem. I feel that it is easy to shirk responsibility from your life if you believe that a thing is fated from birth. Estrid takes a moment of thought, takes a deep breath, and looks at the deck once again. I know that if I were to be elected Hetwoman of Isabel tomorrow, people would be disappointed. I would not be a bad Hetwoman by any means, and of course I would try my best. But they would expect someone more like them to lead by example. Caught between that and wanting to be myself, I have to wonder. Would I be better suited and even enjoy another path in life? Do what is right for you, Estrid. Estrid cocks her head and starts to say something, but you raise a hand to continue. Is giving your whole life for people worth it if it will make you miserable? They will know your heart is not in it. We have seen that ourselves over. No one should pressure you to do anything you aren't comfortable with. You lean on your mop as the two of you stand in silence for a moment, only broken by the wind. More than one, Estrid looks to be on the edge of saying something before stopping herself. It is a while before she speaks again. I would feel a lot more confident if any Thorwaller had ever shown genuine enthusiasm for my approaches. Perhaps then I could feel as though I can and want to do this. Without that, after all of this, my life just feels skewed. Only you know how to set it right again. Estrid's eyes flick up to look at you, but she tries to keep her emotions out of her face. You seem to know that, as it is not the best decision for you or your people, but only you can know how much of yourself you are willing to give up for them. And if the answer is that you can't, only you know whether that is acceptable to you. As you finish, sad realization washes over her face and she doesn't say anything. You begin to get back to scrubbing as she thinks, but you both think about all there is to consider. The past, the future, what it all means in the grand scheme of things. After a little while, Estrid shakes her head, massaging the back of her neck, and looks towards the stairs. I might lie down for a while, Outlander. I am in desperate need of sleep for what is to come. The raid is going to be harder to fight than Jalvik. You should rest too. You indicate the mop and bucket to her. Once I've finished. Rest well. Thank you, friend. She goes to leave and then quickly stops short and turns back to you. Thank you for everything. I really mean that. She is off before you can reply, and you watch her back until it disappears down the stairs. Save again? Before turning towards Isabessel, the King Wolf must stop offshore of Nostria for a Thorwall-style resupply. The raid. You step out onto deck just in time to hear Gunnar shouting commands to those on deck. Drop the anchor stone, prepare the Scudas, quickly. The rain flicks and spits onto your face if you take a good look at the Nostrian landscape. It's not entirely natural rain, nor is it entirely natural fog that fills the air. The plan is not to take the Nostrians completely by surprise. In fact, the Keen Wolf Raiders seem to want their opponents to know they're coming. That the Nostrians certainly will, as unnatural and ghoulish as the weather has become. But the spells will still hide the Scuda's exact approach, and will still help protect the Raiders from arrows. Maidner and Darksong have each helped enhance the conditions with their own magic. You join them in the forecastle once they are finished, as the Keen Wolf judders and yawns to a halt. I am incredibly unsure about this. You will have 15 Thorwallian Raiders alongside you, Outlander, including Swafnil. I feel far more sorry for the Nostrian soldiers who have to face you. Your mind is already racing all the way to Jalvik weeks ago now. You never really thought too much about the fact that you killed someone there, and now you are almost certain you'd have to do so again. All in the name of a glorified trust exercise. That makes you very queasy. There's a bit of a commotion behind you as more of the raiders start spilling out onto the deck, readying themselves. Here, Outlander, you should take this. From around his waist, Maidner snatches up one of the vials and throws it at you so it loops through the air. You scramble to catch it, both hands before it can smash against the deck, looking at the liquid inside. Thank you. I'm sure this will come in useful. It never hurts to be too prepared. Good luck, Outlander. While you've been talking, the Onasaka has been continuing to prepare the Scudas. They are loaded with as many shields as can be carried, as well as axes, swords, and bows and arrows. Now, Swafnil comes up from below deck too, carrying both of her axes in her hands already. You pocket the vial Maidner gave you and listen closely. Raiders. She points one of the axes at the distant outpost, looking around at her small band of fighters. That is where we are going. We will take both Scudas to the shore, climb the cliffs, and prepare ourselves for the real fight in the trees. Then I leave it to each of you to do what you do best. Laughs, cheers, and cries break out around you. Swafnil grins and raises one of her axes again. The first boat will be responsible for securing ropes and dealing with any patrols in the woods. If you wish to prove yourself before your Autostrasko and your gods, step forward now. Many of those on deck gasp or mutter or give strange looks when Darksong steps forward confidently. From across the crowd, though, you see Estrid fold her arms, looking from person to person for as a few step forward. She usually makes eye contact with you. Not moving a muscle, she waits to see what you will do. The deep, nervous breath, you take a short step forward too. Estrid nods, and as you join Swafnil and the sick brothers to go first, murmurs a wish of good fortune to you. Before stepping into the Scudo, Swafnil turns to the other raiders to shout one last order. Follow us up the cliff as quickly as you can. No one to leave the safety of the trees before I give the order. You barely make a few steps when you hear a door open loudly behind you. To your surprise, Orlo emerges from his cabin, his great axe in hand as he meets the stares of his other Dusko. He takes a look at the eight of you getting ready to step into the first Skuda and tilts his head towards the second. I'll follow you in the second boat. Really? Dirge speaks from behind Swafnold, already standing on the guardrail ready to hop into the boat. The skeptical look he gives Orlver changes, and when the hetman scowls at him darkly. Dirge shrugs. How long has it been? 4 winters? 5? That's enough, Dirge. Orville's expression doesn't so much as flicker as he stares Dirge down. Without a word, he turns to the ship's starboard side and the second Skuda, which is still being prepared. George's eyes follow him the entire way until he's eventually drawn to look and shrug at the raider next to him. Raiders, let us begin. As soon as the Skudas touch ground on the beach, Swafnold orders you to take a rope and start climbing. The ropes are taken from the King Wolf's hold and would usually be used for rigging. Each of the scouts, including you, ties the end of the rope around their waist and starts their way up the cliff face. It isn't quite as sheer or as flat as it looks from a distance, but by no means does that make it easier. With no training and no experience, you must wait and watch the climbers next to you before you begin. With no support to stop you from falling, and in the rain and fog for good measure, it is truly a terrifying prospect. You must find inch-wide grips to clasp onto with your fingers, and the stone is slippery and hard to grip. You find it difficult to gain any purchase with your toes, causing constant panic as your feet slide out of position. And when there are no footholds, you have no choice to pull yourself up by your arms. You've never been so aware of your own weight and how much energy it takes to pull yourself upwards. It does make you feel slightly better that most floor wallers are finding it difficult too. In fact, it is only Darksong that seems to be anywhere at ease. She positively scampers up the side of the cliff, always stretching and always moving. You're only 2/3 of the way up when she reaches the ledge above you, untying her rope with heavy breath. At the very least, I give you someone who can lend directions and pointers, but it is still a hard climb. Within an arm's length of the ledge, your foot slips again and your heart leaps into your throat. As you let out a short, sharp cry, your fingers dig deep into the rock so much that they hurt as you scramble around. 1, 2, and then 3 attempts takes for your foot to find the hold back on the rock. And there you have to take a small moment that makes your arms ache all the way to the tips of your fingers. You even close your eyes till the feeling of nausea passes and your heartbeat steadies. The closer you get, and more muted encouragement you get from Darksong, until finally you can grasp onto something wider than a fingertip and pull yourself up onto the grassy ledge. First your fingers, then your hands, and then your arms and elbows. You immediately collapse onto your back, looking at the gray sky above as you find yourself back on solid ground. You're soon pulled back onto your feet once more and asked to tie your rope off one of the rocks on the ledge. You don't wait for the next group to follow you up, and Swafnold leads you straight towards the trees quickly. It isn't until you are already under the canopy of pine trees that you notice Darksong has disappeared completely. Really, vanished into nothing. Just as she had appeared from nothing in the vault and Jossinger. The rest of you follow Swafnold's lead in being quiet and low to the ground as you tread through the woodlands. It quickly becomes clear that you aren't alone. In fact, ahead of you, you see the Nostrian patrol walking towards the cliff behind you. They're quicker, louder, and fewer in number. 5, you think, trampling the woodland underfoot. Without any command from Self, the 6th Thorwallian warriors at your side all stop and hold their weapons ready. Ready to launch into an attack before the Nostrians know what has hit them. You stay exactly where you are, using the precious time you had to work out exactly where each Nostrian is. A moment later, you hear the first cry as the raider springs up from the fight, and the fight begins around you. You jump up too, clutching your dagger tightly as you step out into the path of the Nostrian. He stumbles backwards in surprise, dropping his shield and barely keeping a hold on his sword. You quickly turn your blade to your hand and slam its palm onto the side of his head. He's instantly knocked out cold, slumping to the ground as his eyes flicker shut. As quiet falls into the woodlands, you glance up to see one last remaining Nostrian standing. He stands with his back bent backwards as if on the edge of falling, only to be caught by something. A moment later, Darksong blinks back into existence, holding her dagger to his throat from behind. She's unsure about finishing the deed, staring at the knife, as opposed to the soldier whose life is in her hand. But she glances up at the 7 of you all look at her and glances back down at the soldier. Steeling herself, she grits her teeth and slices across, throwing the soldier out of her hands and onto the floor. Before anyone can say anything about the nature of the interaction, Swapna steps forward to pick her axe up. We cannot afford to have them attack us from behind the main assault, and nor can we take prisoners here. Put any survivors out of their misery and send them with honor to the gods. There is little to do or say while you wait. If Torkel would find a soldier you left unconscious, murmuring something to him before ending his life. You think about checking in with Darksong, who looks quietly and sadly down at the soldier she killed. But it hardly seemed like the time or place for that kind of talk, though you can see she is definitely troubled. And it's all put to one side when Orville brings up the other 7 of your party through the trees and into the place. Estrid follows behind him, her shield already strapped tightly to her arm and looking around for you quickly. You missed a strong start to the fight, Hetling. The elf's done something. Even the Outlander helped a little. Anyone could think that you don't care. Don't worry, Torquil, I'll do my part. Alright. Now that we're all here, we'll move on towards the outpost, but don't stay behind on the tree line. Let us at least see what we're dealing with before the fighting begins. And quiet, your small company makes its way forward through the trees, leaving the Nostrians piled up behind you. Alright. Sorry. That's finishing off my hot cocoa. It isn't long before you come to the woodland's edge where you can see the outpost far more clearly. Even through the fog, more details are visible now than they were from the Keen Wolf. And the challenge seems that much greater for it. You'd never really seen anything like it and weren't entirely sure what to expect. In the shadows of the fog, you see people walking up and down the palisade. It centers on a large wooden double door where a flag flies triumphantly in the rain and wind. I needed that stretch, thank you. From where you are, you cannot tell whether the watchtowers are manned. After some careful observations, Volfna turns you all and starts giving further commands. Find a strong tree to cut down and shear off its branches. Turn it into a ram. 5 of you will help me carry that ram and use it to break the gate of the outpost down. Everyone else will defend us from the archers in the palisade as we approach and then distract them while we work. The game only recently came out, a few weeks ago. I will lead that group. Choose now whether you will go with Softmold or with me. How exactly will we defend the ram, Orver? Orver grunts and lazily indicates the shields most of the raiders are carrying. Shields will be given to all of those defending. You will form a shield wall around those who carry the ram, running alongside and in front of them as they go. When Softmold gives the order, we will break away, lining up to protect our archers from those in the palisade. That will stop the Nostrians focusing completely on the ram and let us break the gate down. You have to hand it to Orver. He sounds more engaged and enthusiastic now than he ever has in your presence. There's a glint in his eyes that was not there before, now that the fight is upon you. And the other group? It is not a complicated thing. We simply lift and carry the ram while Orver's group protects us. We will move slowly at first, though, to save all the strength we can for later. When we are close enough, I will give the command and we will charge the gate. We will probably need more than one attempt, so Orver's group will have to keep the archers from killing us. Suddenly, you understand why Swapneld is leader of the Keen Wolf Audajas's raids. There's an air of confidence about her that stretches beyond arrogance and into real authority. Just follow. I love how there's an option to just follow Estrid. You know what? Yeah, let's go with Orver. Then I will join Orvel's group to defend the ram. I will go with you too. This plan only works if the ram makes it to the gate to begin with. With that, the company settles into its final preparations. While you wait for work on the ram to be completed, weapons are exchanged and more details are drawn up. Darksong barely speaks, staying close to the larger group that will defend the ram. In the weapon exchange, someone offers her a bow and a quiver of arrows, which at first she stares at blankly. Somewhat begrudgingly, she stows her dagger and takes them, sighing as she tests the string tension of the bow. You yourself are past the shield and told to familiarize yourself with its weight before the assault begins. And when preparations are complete, you take up position around those who lift the ram to Swafnild's command. For just a moment, you let yourself stew in the nervous tension of it all, and your skin crawls. The Swafnild shouts, "To honor, to glory!" Her war cry is echoed by almost everyone around you, and just like that, the assault begins. 2 rows protect the ram carriers with their shields. You are in the first, holding your shield over your head to protect both you and the raider to your right. You are then boxed in on the left, where another raider carries a shield to stop arrows coming in from the side. Altogether, you march out of the woods at a brisk walk, letting Swafnild and her team set the pace. The rain has made the ground muddy and difficult to traverse, but you keep pace. And it isn't long before the arrows begin to fly. You hear the first splatter into the earth somewhere to your left, out of sight, but certainly not out of mind. It's followed by cacophony of splintering wood as they come down close to you. Everyone bristles at the sound of it, but Swafnild shouts a patient command. Wait, do not break yet. There's just a moment of quiet where the only sound is everyone's labored breathing. Then the second volley hits with a tremendous crack. You flinch. In the moment, you think an arrow has landed in your shield. It plays on your thoughts as Swafnild breaks into a jog and the company speeds up around you. Would you know if an arrow hit your shield? Surely there would be some change in weight or momentum. Those questions are answered for certain when the next volley hits. The arrows rain down on you from the front of the line to the back, one after another. The loud snap, the arrowhead breaks through your shield just inches away from your arm. Wait! A number of raiders carrying the ram groan loudly at Swafnild's command. A little in front of you, in the outer row of the wall, Estrid adjusts her shield in the brief pause between volleys. Wait! Another volley hits you, and you know that even the sturdy Thorwallian shields won't hold out much longer. One of the ram carriers stumbles, and the group stumbles forward before they catch themselves. Now! At Swafnild's command, the shield bearers begin to pull away from the battering ram. You sidestep neatly to follow as they form 2 lines in front of the palisade. One by one, your small group slams their shields down to the wet ground and then push downwards. Once the shields are lodged in place, you all duck behind them as the ram continues forwards. Those with bows and arrows start preparing themselves to loose. Others start collecting rocks and pebbles they hope to lob at the palisade simply to distract the archers. From behind your shield, you hear the crash that the ram makes it to the gate for the first time. You push yourself up from behind the shield just to get an idea of what is going on. Off to your right, the other shield bearers have done the same as you and are already firing arrows. The ram is already being prepared for a second strike, but those archers directly above the gate are focused on them. Forward! No sooner has the first volley of arrows been released as Orville's command ring out so that both lines can hear it. You are slower to respond than some of the other raiders, who all grab their shields back up and start forward again. You all hold your shields directly in front of you, not even bothering to slit them onto your arms. A loud crack takes you back as an arrowhead punctures your shield again, and your arm buckles at the elbow. A few yards later, you push your shield back down into the mud and clamber down behind it again. Once again, the arrows start flying towards the palisade, and now those with rocks start throwing as well. There is another crash as the ram once more hits the gate. At the end of the line, Orver is knocked onto his back with a long, heavy arrow sticking from the shoulder. As he groans, the ram bearers prepare themselves for one last push, and you know a distraction is needed. You start building a blinding flash formula in your head, even from the safety of your shield. The break in the volleys, you peek out from behind the shield to find a target. The first you lay eyes on is barely more than a shadow in the spray and fog of rain, but it's enough. As he knocks an arrow prepares to shoot, you give yourself the space you need and cast your spell. He immediately staggers back, and you think you hear a stifled cry from the direction of the palisade. The arrow flies high and far, falling harmlessly to the ground as the archer disappears from view. Keep firing. Give Swafnild's raiders time. You're surprised to hear Estrid's voice ring out over the plains before the palisade. She's taken up Orville's position while he recovers and now peeks out from behind the shield towards the gate. You follow her gaze and see the ram bearers racing forwards again. Now, a chorus of war cries rings out as the raiders all scamper forward again, slipping and sliding toward the gate. In the same moment, there is a mighty crash as the ram hits the gate one last time before the bearers finally drop it. The gate is so close to being broken now. One last good, strong strike would do it. You abandon your shield, stepping out into the open to cast Orville at this gate as quickly as you can. The rush of the air from your finger hits the gate square on, finally snapping the beam behind it into. You hear a roar of approval from the raiders, and they rush forwards to pour into the gap left in the palisade. You take just a moment to collect yourself before you follow the raiders, now running through the gate. Even behind the crowd, you see the vicious pole arms carried by about a dozen soldiers directly ahead of you. You see Softmode leap recklessly into the group and hear her blood-curdling cry of rage. Slowly, we've been a little risky so far. You take out your dagger and keep a good arm's length between you and the nearest polearm. Your hesitation allows the soldier carrying it to jab at you with the spike at the end of the weapon. You skip and step in every direction and attempt to avoid the jabs, but your opponent moves with you. Damn it. You see him grin cruelly as he readjusts his grip and thrusts forward sharply, nicking your arm with the axe blade. But as he takes a moment to reset, you can finally move past the blade. The grin disappears from the soldier's face as he tries to pull the weapon back to defend himself as you close in. Around you, the rest of the raiders struggle to make any impact on the defensive line. Oh no! A couple even fall to the weapons as they try to dash past Dadbat and Slice as Nocturne is huddled together. Darn it! I died! Okay, the raid. Okay, we're gonna do things a little differently this time. Hopefully... Let's see, do we have to scale those closer to Yapthos? Yes, this meter's enter makes you look across them in slight horror. That's madness, though. Maynard laughs and looks towards the shore, pointing southwards. Nearest path up is a day in that direction. We don't have time to waste traveling so far south. Besides, that's precisely part of why our raids have always been so successful, Outlander. The Nostrians would never expect such madness. There's a bit of commotion behind you as more raiders spilling out to the deck, readying themselves. Here, Outlander, you should take this. Around his wave, Maynard snatches up the vial. Let's see. That's the vial. Health. Not health. Swelpnil used all of them up in the last raid, and I haven't been able to pick up any more yet. But this should still help stay on your coast. Good luck, Outlander. While you've been talking to Speed us. Sorry, your pocket of Vader and listen closely. Raiders, difference. I'm gonna stay back this time. Your mind stalls in the decision for a long moment before you decide to stay exactly where you are. Estrid nods, makes her way around the group to join you as Swaffnil takes her seven scouts towards the boat. Turns to you and the other raiders to shout one last order. Falls up the cliff as quickly as you can. No one is to leave the safety of the trees before I give the order. A few steps in here to see the Orville comes and joins. And blah blah blah. Following the second boat. And we. How long's it been? 4 adventures, 5. See blah blah blah. Do. Since you touch the ground, Swaffnil orders the 8 scouts up the cliff. They tie it. See, Song is by far the most capable climber of the lot. Instantly reaches the top. Yards can above your head. Jan claps her rope and secures on a rock on the cliff's face. Then she's gone, quite literally vanishing into thin air with her magic to help her find and deal with patrols. With all 8 ropes in place, Orville barks an order for the rest of you to follow after the first climbers. You and Estrid can't help but exchange a look at his sudden change of heart when it comes to being involved. Before you set off to Nostria, he did specifically say this raid was about letting loose a little. Considering his state that day, you have to guess that applies to him as well. Very nervously, you grip the rope tightly in your hands, beginning your own climb up the cliff face. The ropes are taken from the Keen Wolf's hold and would usually be used for rigging, so they are not long enough. But the rain has made the rock beneath your feet slippery and difficult to keep a solid grip on. You're glad that no one has come up the rope after you. But your eyes were always drawn upwards to the rock the rope is tied to, yards above your head. Never in a million years would you have imagined doing anything like scaling a cliff face. And you have to take it slowly, cautiously walking up the rock one foot after another and then lifting yourself up. Every muscle in your body is tense with nervousness and fear, but you grit your teeth, keep your focus on the rock and ledge above you, and under no circumstances look down. You have found something resembling a rhythm to your climbing when you hear some of the cries from above. You spent enough time with Orwellian raiders to recognize the distant sound of clashing weapons, but you can't see any hint of who might be winning or losing the clash. You try not to let the fighting distract you too much from the climb, slowly but steadily continuing upwards. Your confidence and determination to get to the top grows with every step you take, and so too does the danger of falling, and you keep that in mind so that you don't start to rush. You only give yourself the time it takes for you all to complete the climb to recover. Any sound of the fighting you heard has faded again. But just in case, you keep yourself on edge and ready to cast while you wait for the remaining raiders to join you. Oliver leads you up the slopes and into the woodlands with quiet confidence and determination. Estrid is fast behind him, fastening her shield to her arm and unsheathing her sword as the eight of you walk along. The woods are damp and humid and very quiet. It doesn't take you long to come across the first body, a young man, clean-shaven with short hair, wearing the same fish emblem you saw tattered in Orber's quarters. He's barely older than you, which only makes you more anxious about the world you've stepped into. You've only gone a few yards further when you hear a rustling in the brush around you. All eight of you turn around towards town, only to see Swafnil step forward and behind a bush. Darksong follows her clothes, now yet more stained and dark red than they were before. Another handful of Nostrians lie scattered about the place, and the Thorwallians all look grim and focused. You has a strong start to the fight. Torkel, who is also among the scouts, speaks up out of the quiet and gives you a pointed look. You're going to be running out of chances soon, Outlander. Even the elf's done more to prove herself now. He gives Estrid an even darker, more judgmental look than he gives you. She returns it with an unaffected, icy cold stare, at least on the surface, as he wanders away again to the north. She makes sure she is close to you so that the two of you can talk quietly as you traipse through the woodlands. Don't take Horkel's words too much to heart, Outlander. Believe me, I am not much fun of his attitude either, but it is a Thorwallian way. It seems to bear the brunt of it more than I do, Estrid. I am a hetman's daughter. I should know better. I should be the first in line to prove myself at every opportunity. Don't get me wrong, the principle is honorable and I respect it, but surely there has to be more to it. There have to be more ways to gain respect and trust than recklessly throwing yourself into every fight and challenge, don't there? It isn't long before Sweltman brings the company to a halt once more, now at the edge of the woods. From underneath the cover of the canopy, you all look on at the outpost, now looming up the hill before you. Now that it's much closer, it looks far more imposing. You've never really seen anything like it and weren't entirely sure what to expect. In the shadows of the fog, you see people walking up and down the palisade. It centers on a large wooden double door where a flag flies triumphantly in the rain and wind. From where you are, you cannot tell whether the watchtowers are manned. See entrance and fun, welcome to draw give further instructions. Find a strong tree to shut down the ram. 5 of you will help me carry the ram and use it to break the outpost down. I will lead the group. I will lead that group. Choose now whether you will go with Sophomore or with me. How exactly will we use the ram? Just in case I can chop the tree down. It's not a complicated thing. We simply slowly. You'll probably need more than one attempt. Orville's group will have to keep the archers from killing us. Suddenly, understand myself in the lead of the King Wolf Raiders. Blah. Let's see. We're gonna try the ram group this time. Then I'll join this group using the ram. I will go with you, Orville, to defend the ram from the palisade. This plan only works if the ram makes it to the gate to begin with. With that, the company settles into its final preparations. While you wait for work on the ram to be completed, weapons are exchanged and more details are drawn up. Darksong barely speaks a word, staying close to the large group. The same that they get for a bow. Here's the weapon isn't while you are carrying the ram. Okay, guys, around the 6 of you who will lift the ram. It is incredibly heavy, even when the weight is shared between you, and you need a moment to brace yourself. Then Swafnil shouts, "To honor, to glory." Her cry is echoed. Let's see, you start the steady march. Orville and the shield bearers huddle around you closely while Swafnil leads you out of the trees. The ground squelches beneath your feet, and mud churns up as the company goes. The steady rainfall adds a rhythm to the advance. Then the arrow quickly begins to fly. You hear the first splatter into the earth somewhere to your left, out of sight but certainly not out of mind. It's followed by a cacophony of splintering wood as they come down close to you. Everyone bristles at the sound of it, but Swafnil shouts a patient command. Wait, do not break yet. There's just a moment of quiet, where the only sound is everyone's labored breathing. Then the second volley hits with a tremendous crack. Some go wide too as the archer struggled with the unnatural weather conditions. Now Swafnil speeds up a little, and all around you the company breaks into a jog. You only catch a glimpse of what lies ahead before Esra adjusts her shield to block your view. No sooner are you swallowed behind the wall of raised shields as the next volley hit. Now that you're closer, the archers can better direct their shots. Now they land their shots. Now they land right above your head from the front to the back of the line, one after another. Wait! A number of raiders behind you and Swafnil groan loudly. Opposite you, a raider heaves as she jogs, pulling her ram up before it can slip from her fingers. Wait! Another volley hits, and you know that even the sturdy Thorwallian shields won't hold out much longer. One of the ram's carry stumbles, and you feel the weight of it drag you down before they catch themselves. Now! As Swalpmo's command, the shields pull away from you and the rush of battle through you. You're dragged towards Swalpmo and breaks into a sprint, crying out as she carries the ram and all of you with her. The 4 other rollers joined her cry, screaming, okay. You have to grit your teeth, drawing in a deep breath to racing of it. Now do you see the palisade towering ever closer, giving you a moment to brace yourself. And then the ram strikes the gate hard, sending a loud crash reverberating through the air. The gate holds, and momentum pushes you all back a few paces. Ahead of you, Swalpmo growls as an arrow pierces her shoulder. Another hits your left leg, sending pain shooting through you as the archers right above the gate target you. Damn it. Orville's group has some success in pulling some of the others away, and the rain and fog help protect you too. That gives the 6 of you the room you need to step back and find momentum for their second strike. Again, the gate holds, but there is an audible crunch as the beam keeping it shut starts to splinter. Hit the second arrow, eliciting a howling cry as she tries to stay focused on the work. Rocks start to rain down, not big but heavy, and quickly knock you out should they hit you in the head. The third strike at the gate, there is another crack. This time, as you retreat, the gate stays partially ajar. Still, sense of fear when I tried to do it. 2 of our needed at most, at rocks and arrows still rain down. Just the sound of every hand drops at the sick person's appearance. First group tries to do what they can, but the ram is too great of a threat for the Nostrians to ignore. You hear the moment you find yourself shouting loud to keep the ram moving. Come on, we can do this. Heave! Once more, the 5 of you run towards as quickly as you can. Before you reach the gate, the arrow hits in the grip of the square of the sheds and she immediately falls dead. You don't know, but certainly unable to keep the ram lifted. So it wraps her arm around the ram, holds it back up. She slips and slides and screams all the way as she tries to keep the ram moving towards the gate. She hasn't even seen to notice that she is hit with the another arrow, with one bearing itself deep into her leg. Crash! As the ram slams into the gate again, the beam behind it cracks like an egg. All of you drop the ram at once, throwing yourself into the slight cover of the palisade as much as you can. The gate swings back and forward, shaking the foundations of the palisade as it goes, but it still holds strong by the slenderness of vines, requiring just one more strong strike to finish it off. Fine. You see, that's the energy lasts open, and finally snapping beam in 2. You hear a roar of approval. Okay. Behaving Rodriguez. Damn it. Bow fight to kill. Let's do the halberdiers this time. The initial offenses gained too much ground and can be halted now, though the fog is now starting to let the conditions make it difficult for the archers, and that has already helped you. So as the raiders rush towards them, then Johnson, you run with them. Nostrian's polearms are far more awkward to use at such close range, but to your surprise, you find it more difficult to defend against too. You find that most of the soldiers first thrust at you with the blade. When that fails, they jerk or swing the weapon backwards and try to catch you with the axe blade as well. You quickly learn that surviving the fight is not as much about raw power as it is athleticism. Ah, damn it! Okay, go back to the scene start. Okay, let's see. See, no matter what I do here, I take damage. Motoricus. Damn it. See, Buffalo's going crazy. Fights knockout. Okay, going after the halberdiers gets me killed like almost immediately. Let's try the archers again. Let's try approaching from cover. From that cover, you can slip around the edge of the outpost and approach the platform from the side. From there you can get to the ladder without attracting arrows at all, though it takes more time. But by the time the archers see you clambering the ladder, you're too close for them to stop you with arrows. The first two throw their weapons down the platform, take out daggers to fight you with instead. The first moves carefully and slowly, sizing up as you come towards the pair. Before either of you can land a blow, an arrow slams into his arm in the small gap between his armor plating. As he cries out in pain, you and the other archer glance across a small square at the entrance to the outpost. There, Darksong has stood, already knocking another arrow into her bow. Fog now close to gone, you see her hurry you along before she loses another arrow. You bring your attention back to the first archer who has dropped the dagger to clutch his arm. Oh my goodness. Kill him. I'm sorry, we're gonna kill him. Okay. Don't let rush into a second. You don't need to. He's already dead. See before you move the dark one. Okay, shot the predators behind back towards the gate. Let's see. Okay, so I have 5 health now instead of 2. Alright, and that's when I need reinforcements. Maybe I'll last a little longer. Okay, and I have magic again. Fall back. Strikes you that with where your first markers now. There's nothing to stop them from surrounding. Wait, fall back, fall back. We need to stop them from surrounding us. Look around their situation for just a moment before they start edging backwards. As soon as you are standing with your back to the gates, the Nastrians can't get past you towards it. Able to make an easy escape if necessary. Okay, so that's just like that. Forwards, the Nastrian commander. Command soldiers reported. This face will use before the melees rejoined archers release arrows and shield bearers. Okay, hold on. Commander swinging his morning star on his shoulder as he enters the fray. At that moment, a memory stirs in your mind. You aren't sure what comes to in this moment of all moments, but it flashes before your eyes in an instant. He sees it here. You're shocked and standing in front of you, showing some gestures. You remember reading a scroll with black, dried, and very faintly black ink with one word written. A complex of powerful elemental spell meant to be used when your opponents are numerous. The powerful back from both sides of your hands. Brought back to reality, some punch across your mind. The allies are made of stern stuff and can move far quicker in their lighter armor. There is no easier way for you to finish this fight. Yes. As easily as the click of your fingers, formula is spilt into your mind and the gestures that come to your hands. As you bring them together in a bowl, you feel pressure building and building as the air there twists itself into a frenzy. As if it's on its own, it flings itself forward, flying away from you in the straight line towards the Nostrians. As soon as it makes contact with the first one, it explodes a deafening thump that flings the soldiers into the air. In an instant, the arcane blast expands in a sphere and everyone nearby is knocked off their feet. The commander is struck too, crumbling backwards in his cage like armor until he hits the floor. Anyone that fell doesn't reach stops what they are doing, all turning to look at you. Their expressions range from shock to abject horror at your sudden surge of power. Westwind, sensing the opportunity you've provided, raises her axe and roars, lunging into the fight once more. The other Thorwallers follow suit, even if some are quicker to do so than others. You are left in relative safety to collapse to your knees, drained by the effort of casting such a powerful spell. Only now does the gravity of what you've done seem to wash over you. A small part of you even wishes that here had been with you to see it. Despite the odds, you were starting to stack up in the Austrians' favor. The raiders hold their own. As more of the Austrians fall, more of those who remain begin to lose heart. The raiders don't stop until it is clear there will be no more fighting. Even then, as the few Austrians left standing begin to surrender, they keep a tight grip on their weapons, just in case. But of course, the raiders are near to completely spent as well. Almost all of them seem glad that the fighting has come to an end, showing visible signs of relief in their faces. Yes, I seem to have survived this time. Round up any who remain. Make sure none are hiding anywhere and start lending to our wounded. Swapna breaks her orders through very deep breaths, tucking her axes back into her belt. It is only after a few moments that she wipes down her face, which is incredibly bloody. She takes another deep breath and closes her eyes, murmuring to herself softly. As the raiders start to carry out her instructions, you simply sit and try to stop your mind from racing. It's Torkel that finds you like this, wiping his axe down on his sleeve as he approaches. That's some power you hold, Outlander. Yes. Yes, it is. You don't mean to come across as arrogant or even self-assured, but Torkel's expression tightens into one of discomfort and distrust as he looks at you. Then he relaxes again slightly as he rubs the back of his head. I just wanted to thank you. You did well for the Odesstrasso today. You try to account for the state of the raiders while the remaining Austrians are gathered together. All in all, they aren't actually in bad shape. Some are injured, yes, but mostly only picked up cuts and bruises. You yourself are as close to death as you have ever felt. At no point during your sorting of the Kimball's cargo all those days ago did you become aware of the healing supplies. Perhaps some can be found in the outpost when the time comes to find supplies you are here for. The raiders take it upon themselves to start opening up doors and rifling through buildings. Softmill slumps down against the wall, resting her head against it with her eyes closed for a little while. Orville paces back and forth, his fingers strumming the handle of his axe as he looks around shiftily. Your mind turns to just how you are going to get the supplies the raiders are collecting down the cliff face. You imagine some time is going to be spent hoisting up ropes to tie around crates and boxes. You will all probably have to carry what you can, so after all that energy is spent, there is still some work to do. But after your thoughts are interrupted when a scuffle rings out over the outpost. All of you in the air turn to see Dirge and the raider dragging someone along towards you. Your eyes fall on a soldier wearing a garb the other Nostrian soldiers didn't. He's injured, lightly, and struggling to free himself from Dirge's strong grip. Dirge bats every attempt to hit him away very easily, and then throws the soldier down the middle of you all. He indicates the soldier to Orville, who stops pacing at the sight of him. This coward said he is the captain of the outpost, but I found him trying to rake his way through the palisade. A ripple of groans and light chuckles travels to the raiders present, as if that behavior was to be expected. The captain slowly raises his hands to Orville as Orville approaches him, looking pointedly away from the hetman. The outpost is yours. Take what you want. We won't stop you. I only request that you let those still alive leave. For a long moment, Orville doesn't do much as move a muscle. Even his fingers, which you are so used to tapping on any surface they can find, keep a tight hold on his axe. Awaiting his response, the captain slowly starts to lift his gaze upwards, and then Orville chuckles. Request. He forcibly rests the axe on the ground so the axe head splits up mud into the captain's face. Orville rests his hands on the butt of the weapon, looking darkly down at the captain, who avoids his gaze again. You weren't in a position to request anything. The captain swallows and quickly nods, not daring to try looking Orville in the eyes again. You sense a noticeable shift in the atmosphere around you. Every raider has stopped what they are doing to watch the exchange. In the corner of your eye, you see Swalfmill stand up again, a look of deep concern on her face. It's echoed in Dirge and Torkel's faces too, and all the other raiders. Estrid's as well. Darkson looks from person to person, as if she feels the same tension in the same moment as you. Orville, though, looks different. Oddly, he seems calmer, more relaxed than you've ever seen him before. And as he watches the captain cower at his feet, a dark smile starts to cross his lips. Do you know who I am? It isn't what you expect him to ask at all, and you are suddenly taken aback. But what is even more astounding is the captain nods fervently in response. We saw the ship before the fog came in. I wasn't certain at first, but when we saw pirates coming out of the trees, then I knew. The stories are true. Orville snorts out a chuckle in response. That laugh triggers something in your mind. A memory? A dream? No, a vision. Of a village burning around you, the tight vines around your hands and pain in both of your legs. Of Orville breaking through a crowd of raiders who stayed in front of you with a look of malice and malcontent. Of him stalking towards you with that axe held tightly in his hands. Snapping back to reality at the blink, you see that Orville has started pacing around the captain. Orville, what are you doing? What are you planning to do? You aren't even sure if Orville hears your question. He's staring quite intently at the captain, now circling him slowly. No one dares break the silence, all caught in the tension of what is happening in front of you. Eventually, it's the captain himself that speaks. Please, I will swear the soldiers to silence. We will say we never saw you. Or we will tell everyone we saw you if that's what you want. Just please don't hurt us. Not like that. Another flash in your mind, surrounded by the deep, bitterly cruel chuckle that you've come to recognize so well. Orville ignores you, glancing back towards the crowd, then at you again quickly. Gunnar shouts at him over the raging fires that surround you all as the crowd jeers and shouts. Phantom pain washes over you and your eyes snap open. Back to reality. You feel uncontrollably, inexplicably dizzy, dropping to your knees. Estrid staggers back too, holding her head in her hand as she tries to shake whatever she has seen away. You hear a growl from Orville and look up in time to see he has quickened his pace around the captain. Swapnil and Darksong are affected too, both shaking their heads and blinking. No one else is quite sure where to look, caught between your visceral reactions to whatever this is that has captured you. No. No. The roar of anger, Orville lunges at the captain, shoving him to the floor and bearing down on top of him. The captain whimpers, crawling in onto his front to try to scramble away. He moves about an inch before Orville catches him, picks him up and hurls him back down on his back again. No. I will not be threatened. I will not be manipulated. I will not be beaten. Do you hear me? Yes, With another roaring cry, Oliver slams the butt of his axe to the captain's chest, cutting his sentence short. As the captain coughs and splutters, Orville raises his axe and hits him with the shaft again. I feel like if I try to stop him, I will die. Okay, so it's the fiend at work over it. I don't know. It's different this time, but I am seeing the same as before, as when it last attacked us. It's playing with your mind. Again, Orville doesn't respond, jabbing the captain again and again. The captain cries out every time the butt of the blade strikes him, flailing about to protect himself from it. George breaks forward to walk towards him, but Torquil quickly catches him by the shoulder and shakes his head. It might help. There are a few more strikes where Orville bends down low to scream in the captain's ear. You will not take my life from me. The captain is slipping away from consciousness, his eyes struggling to stay open even as Orville growls. It's mine. I won't be robbed of that. Again, there is a change to him. His voice is coarse, and all the anger has slipped from his words. You'd almost think it was desperate now. He breathes heavily as he stands up straight, catching a grip on his axe with one hand just before it slips from reach. He looks around at you all, staring back at him, very unsure what to say or do without incurring his wrath. Find the supplies. Get them to the ship. We are leaving. And we are heading north. Yes? Back to Islecell to finish this. Overlooks at the sky as if stricken by sudden exhaustion, stepping over the fallen captain with an awkward step. But he doesn't reply, and George's expression quickly sours. Do not do this again, Hetman. I gave you an order, George. And I asked you a question. Or over. Once again, the rest of you look on in stunned silence as the two of them size each other up. Oliver is fuming. His fingers once again begin to tap, tap, tap against the shaft of his axe. George does not stand down, shaking his head and pointing at Oliver threateningly. Look at what you just did. Look at it. This is what the fiend is doing to you? We are Thorwallers, proud and strong, yes, but we are not savages. We need to finish this before it gets worse. The two of them keep looking at each other for a long moment, and no one takes their eyes off the battle of wills. Slowly, Orville begins to walk forward towards George. George doesn't move, watching Orville every step of the way until his hetman is towering over him. Find the supplies, get them to the ship. We are leaving. With that, he thunders past, storming away through the broken gate and leaving the outpost behind him. George shakes his head and throws an embittered hand as if to wave Orville away angrily, and then storms off too. Slowly but surely, the rest of the raiders begin to give up too, starting with the work that still has to be done. Okay. Orville's gonna get me killed, I can already tell. You glance over at Estrid. He looks about the same as you feel. You feel terrible. There's a pit in your stomach that feels wider and darker than any of the anxiousness you felt in the last weeks. It feels like a threat, or a warning. Something impending, about to erupt. Are you alright? Your thoughts are broken up by Darksong's appearance in front of you. I have a bad feeling about all of this. Darksong considers your response, or lack thereof, for a moment before looking out of the gate. She turns back to you, she opens her mouth to speak, but quickly closes it again. After a moment of thought, she tries again. I understand wanting to run. It's something a lot of these people cannot understand. Once again, she looks away through the ruined gate of the outpost and out into the plains. When she turns back to you, there is a more assured, confident look in her eyes. It's never as easy as just finishing it. She seems to pause for another moment of intense thought before nodding and turning to walk away. Once again, you're left alone in relative quiet. And with so much on your mind, you find that to be all right. The memories, dreams, visions, whatever they were, still play on your mind. And there is an ever so slight ache in your neck, which only adds to the growing pit of dread you feel inside you. This is it, you tell yourself. Whether or not Orville joins you, you are going to after the fiend now. The final stretch, you realize. With the worst yet to come, you fear. Phew! Okay, let's save. Goodness gracious. Okay. Go out to George. With tensions rising aboard the Key Wolf, you and your companion begin to lose patience with Orville stalling. Chapter Deeds Unspoken. A movement in the corner of your eye brings you back to reality. The low hum of chatter around you seems to get louder, and you take a look around the galley. The Keen Wolf is anchored for the night, and some of the raiders have stayed here long after your meals were eaten. It's those that were not part of the raid that are talking most. They're far from jovial. They would have said something was wrong when you returned from the mainland. But they aren't shaken like the rest of you. After the incident in the outpost, the supplies were secured and shipped back to the Keen Wolf. Those that were badly injured were patched up as best as could be before stepping foot on the Skuta. And since then, your mind has been worrying. Your mind has been caught between the memory of Orlver beating the Nostrian captain with his axe and the memories of the visions. Around and around they swim in your mind, always with that warning feeling. Opposite you, Estrid drains what's left of her mead and sets the cup down, staring into the inside of it thoughtfully. After a moment, she shakes her head and releases the cup from her grip, looking up at you and talking quietly. I keep coming back to that burning village. Why, when the Nostrian captain mentioned stories, my mind went to that. The more I think about it, the more certain I am that I've seen it before. The last time the fiend attacked us on our way back from the Alkenfelsen. It wasn't just you who saw it. It is the second time I have seen it as well, because I also saw it then. I know Swafmild and Darksong both saw something too, but I don't know for certain that it was the same thing. But if they did, then that makes it all those there who are also marked by the fiend. I'm certain Maidner would have seen it too if he had been there. Estrid thinks for a moment, staring off into space before speaking again. When Brand told us the story of the fiend on the night it first attacked us, he said its victims were driven mad. He never said they were connected in such a way. I wonder if that is what it does. Being stuck with other people's darkest moments for the rest of your life. She falls silent for a long while, falling into thought again. You're too exhausted to even manage that much, and just sit and wait for the conversation to pick back up. Eventually, Estrid stops, and then starts again. It's clear to me that the fiend is very powerful. Whether or not we believe it is fated, we will have to fight together in order to defeat it. Especially if we must do so without the demon's tooth. But even together, I don't think we have much hope if we do not trust each other. And I don't trust Orlver. I want to know what happened in that village from the visions. Honestly, I want to know whether we should think about just leaving him behind. What about the runes that Brand cast? One said that Orlver was supposed to help us, that we must fight together. Estrid looks away again, a little frustrated and stifling some movement of her head. After a moment, she looks back up at you with steeled eyes. Then so be it. We will fight this monster together, Outlander, with or without Orlver. Once again, she stops, pursing her lips and looking around the galley. You rather get the feeling she is calming herself down as if she felt she was getting carried away. I feel like if we can understand what happened today, we might finally convince him to stand with us. And if that does not work, then we can just leave him be. And I don't think he will simply tell us. Someone on the ship must know about what that burning village means. I want to speak to Gunnar about it. And if he won't tell us, then we find someone else who will. What do you say? Now it is your turn to take a long moment of thought before you nod decisively. Yes. You see the look of relief over Estrid's face as she hears your confirmation. I understand, and you're right. Enough is enough. There is another large crowd of the Udasco out on deck. As soon as you step into the night, you can feel eyes on you. You are under no illusions. Some of it is undoubtedly real. Reports of what happened in the outpost have already spread to the people who weren't there. That, and the fiend's attacks upon the Keen Wolf, has all but confirmed to the crew that you were cursed. Some of them give you a wide berth for it, but you know some of it is in your head, too. Driven by the paranoia that is the response of your suspicion of their hetman. Driven by fragments of nightmares of memories and visions of burning villages. Driven by flashes of him and his speech and everything you just want to forget about. It all makes you rather glad that Estrid is with you, struggling just as much. You just want to get it out of the way. To rid yourself of the unnecessary extra tension and nervousness building up inside of you. You both look around nervously at the crowd as you walk together. This is the right thing to do, Outlander. I'm ready. You look up onto the quarterdeck when Gunnar, as usual, overlooking the steering of the ship. From where you are, it's difficult to tell anything about his mood. Estrid tilts her head to indicate you follow behind her. You shimmy your way through the crowd as you go, trying to keep your head down as people chatter. Together you walk up the quarterdeck where Gunnar and another member of the Audisasa stand. Estrid speaks up first, clearing her throat to get Gunnar's attention from the helm. Gunnar, do you mind if we talk to you for a while? From here you can tell far more easily that he has a lot on his mind, more on his mind than usual. His eyes flick between you both as he tries to gauge what the conversation might be about. but he acquiesces, indicating to the free crewmate to take over as helmsman while you talk. Without a word, the three of you walk to the very back of the ship, forming a small circle. Have you heard about everything that happened earlier? Yes. Flapfield and George have both given me their accounts. I hear you impressed the waiters a lot, Outlander, though I suppose that is not what this is about. Indeed not. We need to talk about Orlver. Gunnar gives you both a weak shrug and shakes his head. I'm not sure what you expect me to say. We want to understand why he has been the way he has this entire journey. Gunnar looks at the floor uncomfortably as you continue. Even before we came aboard, Orlver was skeptical about all of this. Even as Bran tried to explain it to us on the night of the Fiend first attacked us in Ulfgar's hall. Gunnar nods strongly enough for you to recognize that you don't have to continue. A long moment passes without him speaking, though, and Estrid feels the need to pick the conversation up. He doesn't seem like the man I heard stories about when I was growing up. Gunnar nods again, this time in genuine understanding of why you're pushing the topic. There's another moment of quiet as he collects himself, and then Gunnar talks quietly to you both. There was a time when Orlver was a good man. Honest, brave, determined. And when he was elected, he was a good hetman too. He led us well. He led by example, and he never risked our lives. He only ever told us to do what he was willing to do. That was before the burning village we saw yesterday. He nods glumly, staring into an empty space in the middle distance as if remembering it himself. Windhaven, an Austrian village. It is not something I wish to remember. We wish to understand what happened there. What happened there is not important, Hetling. It is important. The Fiend is using it to torment us. If that is what is stopping Orlver from facing it, perhaps we can help. Perhaps the Fiend will even have less sway over him then. Don't you think I've tried? You hear the Gunnar's voice that you aren't used to hearing. Just the smallest break of desperation sneaks into his otherwise constantly stressed and frustrated tone. I am his closest friend, Outlander. I have spent a decade trying to make him see that it need not change him the way it has. If I had no hope, then if I had no hope, then what do you possibly think you can do? He thinks long and hard about it. He even turns to look at the Keen Wolf's guardrail towards the west before turning back to you again. But he shakes his head and gives a long and heavy, tired sigh. I'm sorry. You knowing what happened will not make things better. In fact, it will likely just make things worse. Believe you me, Orville will not hear a word of it spoken aboard the Keen Wolf. To worries you that much, you're probably better off trying to fight the Fiend without him. And may the gods' good graces go with you. Without another word, he pushes gently past both of you to head back to the helm. Estrid stares after him as he goes, not sure whether to be angry, unsurprised, or upset. A few moments later, he walks away too, shaking her head as she heads back down the stairs. You follow behind at a steady pace, trying to make it seem to the rest of the crew as if things aren't as bad as they are. Estrid stops short at the Keen Wolf's main mast, veering off towards the guardrail to look over the side of the ship. You catch up with her a moment later, unsure where to begin unraveling Gunnar's dismissal. I can respect Gunnar staying low to Orva for so long, but it hardly helps us. From the very moment we walked up to him, he seemed hesitant to talk to us. He probably doesn't wish to dwell on it either. Estrid thinks about it for a moment before she nods her agreement. And we did learn something. I've never heard of Windhaven. I take it you haven't either. You chuckle through your nose. I had barely heard of Nostria before I came north. Well, as I said, there must be something on this ship who was. We need to speak to someone who is not so close with Orlver. Estrid is quiet while she looks around at some of the crew who are still meandering by the deck. Then she has an idea and turns back to you. George is ready to step up and stop Orlver in the outpost and has already confronted him about the Fiend once. He might be more willing to speak to us. We really must be careful, alright? We do not want to cause a disagreement between Orlver and Ojasko. Actually, that kind of disagreement might help us to convince Orlver now. But yes, I'll be careful. Come, let's find him. You find George back in the galley, talking quietly to a couple of the other crewmates who joined you for the fight. He sees you approaching him from the doorway and beckons you to join the group of them. As you get closer, though, it becomes obvious their conversation is coming to a close. George claps the uninjured shoulder of a crewmate whose left arm is heavily bandaged with some ragged cloth. Just be careful and let Maynard take a look at it. It's not so time for you to be slapping her yet. The raider laughs the comment off, and you recognize her as the woman who accompanied George to your test. She gives Estrid a careful nod as she walks away, followed by the other crewmate who you don't know so well. George beckons you again, this time to sit down beside him. I hope you'll sleep well tonight, Outlander. It was quite a fight today. Is she going to be alright? George looks to his friend who has disappeared into the commons and shrugs. She was hit by one of those blasted arrows and the wound is festering. I've seen worse, but in a life like ours, you never know what the Runges have planned. The three of you fall into an uncomfortable silence for moments before George shrugs. He steers the conversation around, looking from one to the other of you curiously. What can I do for you? We want to talk to you about Orlver. What happened in the outpost, everything that has happened recently. We want to put an end to this matter with the Fiend, and I think you might be able to help us. I'm glad to hear someone wants to finish it. I was starting to worry. Was it always like this now on the Keen Wolf? George very quickly shakes his head, bringing his leg up onto the barrel he sits on to lean on his knee. I suppose it was always a little strange. Even when I joined the Odajasko, Orlver was already weary of going ashore, but at least spent time with us. Over the years, that has stopped as well. We've seen less and less of him. Now I am not sure what's going on anymore. What do you mean he was weary of going ashore? Esther's voice is laced with suspicion as she asks her question. He dislikes it. In my time here, I have raided with Orlver only twice, and once was yesterday. I think he may have left the Keen Wolf. George looked at the ceiling and scowled, trying to remember back through the years. Only for those raids, actually, and to visit Isabissel, of course. That's it. I have always thought that is why the others also captured the Keen Wolf and chose to live on it. I don't know why, though. Really, it has never mattered that much. He does not even go ashore when you visit the Orvalian settlements. He has Gunnar do whatever needs to be done for him. I really cannot understand why you all accept this, George. George looks at Estra's bewildered expression and his eyebrows thread together. A head person is supposed to lead by example. They are supposed to make decisions that represent us, protect us, strengthen us. Orlver seems never to have been interested in taking that seriously, and yet you all stand by him. Why? George's expression doesn't change as he shifts in his seat, crossing his arms, taking a long time to think. Eventually he sighs and shrugs. You have to understand, Hetling. We have all chosen to live a little differently out here. We have no Dyers, no Godi. We are the only family any of us know for each other. Every night is a gift from the gods because every night could be our last. I admit I did find it all strange when I first came aboard, but all in all we live a comfortable life. We don't go hungry, we stay fit and strong. Until now we had been content. Until now the way Orlver chose to live has not harmed any of us. So I suppose we just let it be. We trusted in his past. And in Gunnar, who has always vouched for him. I suppose we all just came to accept it. With that he goes silent, though you can see he still has a lot on his mind. Esther does not really look that satisfied with the answer, but doesn't follow up with anything else. George though sighs and unfolds his arms again, scratching at his beard and thought, might it be the Fiend who has caused this in Orlver? The Fiend hasn't been awake that long. Esther's dissatisfaction is still clear in her voice, even as you move the conversation forward. It could be connected somehow. We think perhaps whatever Orlver is trying to avoid is probably what the Fiend is using against him. That seems to be the pattern with the Fiend. George listens to your explanation intently, nodding his understanding. Something came up when we tried to speak to Gunnar about this. Do you know anything about the village of Windhaven? George takes a long moment to think about it, but then grimaces and shakes his head. I'm not certain. It sounds familiar, I suppose, but I don't remember anything particular about it. It's certainly not anywhere I've been in my life. Something happened there. We aren't sure what. We haven't seen it clearly yet, but when the Fiend last attacked the Keen Wolf, we both saw a village burning. Orlver and Gunnar were both there, and Orlver did something. I don't know what exactly. It was nothing good, that much is certain. George listens intently to you both, scowling not out of respect or disbelief, but more out of confusion. The Fiend. Well, it is a demon, isn't it? The visions are fiction, designed to torment. They are certainly not to be trusted. It felt like I remembered it, and it only happened when Orwell was beating that Nostrian captain. And when we spoke to Gunnar about it, he also recognized it as something real. George's face slowly falls as he mulls over what you are telling him. Do you know who might know anything more about it? I don't know. If Gunnar did not tell you, then you might ask Orwell himself, of course. But I don't think I've heard anyone talk about that all in my time here. And there are only one or two others who were part of this Odesjasko before I arrived. Swapnid, Torkel, Maidner, a couple of the others. And if it was before the Keen Wolf was seized, it might be that no one knows. Was the crew the Odesjasko replaced when the Keen Wolf was stolen? George shrugs. Maybe. I always thought they had built this Odesjasko from nothing. It's not uncommon for Thorwalders to go their own way and form new bands to raid with. In the silence that follows, you rack your mind for answers. Something happens in Windhaven, then the Keen Wolf is captured. Orville rarely shows his face in Thorwall or Nostria during raids, and after the seizure, they have to recruit an entirely new Odestrasco. You think all you think all three of you come to the same conclusion at the same time. They wanted to ensure no one knew what happened. George's expression grows even darker, and you see him curling a fist on the table. Whatever happened must be grim indeed. It is not much the nature of Thorwallers not to share even the darkest of stories. And if no one else knows, we must talk to Orville himself, before the fiend uses it to drive us all mad or we turn on each other because of it. Estrid sits for just a moment longer before she resolves to go through with it and stay and sleep. Before she can walk away from the table, George catches her by the arm. Wait. We should talk more before you go and speak to Orville. You look across the table at them both, having not quite stood up yourself. Estrid takes a moment longer to respond to George's request, slowly sitting down next to him. It is clear that you think talking to Orville about this will help you in your fight against the fiend somehow, Hetling. I'm not marked, so I leave that to your judgment. But what if it doesn't? What will you do if you cannot convince Orville to fight alongside you? You and Estrid glance across the table at each other nervously. At the same time, you both lean in so that your conversation becomes even quieter than it already was. George follows your lead, looking from one to the other of you again as he waits for an answer. I consider just letting him stay here while we deal with the fiend ourselves. George nods slowly, looking intently at his hands, which are clasped together in front of him. I suppose it's easy for you both. When this business is dealt with, you can go back to your lives and never have to worry about it again. Me? I have a growing doubt in my mind. Orville has become dangerous now. And if what you say is true, it may be that he was always capable of this. He pauses for a moment, his face dark and sullen in the dim light of the galley. I do not know if that is the kind of person who should lead us, even in the loosest meaning of the word. Can you call an election for a new head person? We may have to, if loyalty to Orville is wavering. Honestly, I still don't know how it has not already happened. She gives a pointed look at George, who shrugs. None of us knew from what I know now. Otherwise, much might be different. Oh, trust me, I'm hydrating. All this reading requires I hydrate constantly. George falls quiet again, rubbing his hands together before he looks at you both one more time. I am worried about what may happen if the fiend attacks again before we reach the shore. If something happens like it did this afternoon, then speak up. Like I think you were going to before Torquil stopped you. If the other members of the Odestrasco hear you speaking your mind, perhaps they will too. Then Orville will see that he is losing your trust. Once again, George looks attentively at you for the entire duration of your speech. When you have finished, he nods slowly and then chuckles and shakes his head. You glance over at Estrid, who is giving you a small but proud smile. Very well. I did not think I would see the day that an outlander not part of my Odestrasco would direct my actions, but you speak a lot of sense. I will speak my mind if needs be. Is there anything else before we try one last time to get ahead of this? George shakes his head. Good luck to you both. For the sake of all of us, I hope the Runjas have looked kindly upon you. This time, no one tries to stop Estrid as you both march your way through the galley and then the commons. Neither of you speak as you step back into the cold, brisk night. You ignore the crowd, which is slowly starting to peter out. You both simply round the stairs and duck into the shadows cast by the quarterdeck outside of Orwell's quarters. Estrid hesitates for just a moment before she balls a fist and bangs against the door, quickly and loudly. Orville, we need to talk. You might have expected there isn't any sign of a quick response. That is all the encouragement Estrid needs. With a sigh, she simply opens the door herself. You stop just a couple of steps down the stairs into Orville's quarters. You weren't sure what you were expecting to find in the room, but you were expecting to find Orville alone. He isn't. He sits on the sill of the big square panel window that looks out over the wide ocean to the south. To your surprise, though, Darksong is perched cross-legged on the desk, now turned to see who is barging in. I didn't say you could come in. Orville is glaring at you both as if daring either of you to try to justify the sudden interruption. Next to you, Estrid clams up, looking from him at Darksong and then back again nervously. This is unexpected. We thought you were alone. You thought wrong. Get out. The growing threat and anger in Orville's voice must shake Estrid out of her stunned state. Inside of a single moment, she has readjusted herself and is continuing down the stairs. No. We are a day or two away from arriving back at this vessel to take on the fiend once and for all. And here you are, still acting as though it can be avoided. We need to clear the air between Orville so that we all come through this alive. We need to understand why the Fiend is trying to show us what happened in Windhaven. At the first mention of it, you see Orville's head snap up to stare at Estrid as he visibly stiffens. What? The Fiend is using it against you, Orville, against us, all of us, really. If we can understand it, perhaps it won't hold as much power over us the next time it attacks. Orville snarls and starts marching towards you with the fiery fury. Your mind is already starting to reel at the possibilities of what might happen next as he reaches the desk. In that same moment, Darksong finally stops staring at you and quickly glances over at Orville. In a flash, she leaps off the table and darts around Orville, holding her hand up to stop him from moving forward. He freezes and looks at her sharply. Remember, don't assume the worst. And the shadows cast by the lamp, there is still enough light to see Orville's eyes flick from her to you. For a long moment, you will all stand ready for some escalation. But with another growling sigh, Orville backs off, walking back towards the window. I don't care to discuss Windhaven. Please leave. The Fiend doesn't care whether you care to discuss it or not, Orville. Actually, no, it might. In fact, if you try even not to think about it, it might only get worse. Wouldn't you rather know how it plans to hurt you? I know enough, Outlander, and no one else needs to. Why? What could be so bad that you will not tell us when it might even save your life? This isn't about saving our lives, Hetling. Silence falls in the quarters, and for a while it remains unbroken. Darksong looks between the three of you, almost as if she expects to have to mediate the dispute. In the silence, you watch Oliver retake his seat on the windowsill, looking out over the muted colors of the sea. Don't you feel it? Every time the Fiend strikes, that dread, that wish to run as far away as you can, as quickly as you can. You know of what he speaks, though you do not know whether it is right now to admit it. I do. Do you think we want to fight? The Fiend will almost certainly kill us, but if we do nothing, it will definitely kill us. Again, the room is left in silence, though you see Orville shifting his weight on his seat. It is another long moment before he looks you in the eye again. The damage is done, Outlander. You know that as well as I do. The tension has left him completely now, replaced with a dark emptiness that threatens to engulf you all. But what is also clear is that you simply will not get the answer you came to his quarters to find. In fact, looking at Darksong as she quietly and sadly watches Orville, you think there may be more questions. But Estrid is not as willing to accept the situation, shaking her head despondently. Okay. Why not even look to hope, Orville? Why not just try to finish this? You hear the words in your head even before she says them again. The same words she said at the very end of the raid. It's never as easy as just finishing it, Estrid. If you don't know that already, you will soon. Orville, you realize, has already stopped paying attention, slipping back into his own world of thought. Now Darksong joins him on the window, hovering over his shoulder as she looks out into the sea, perhaps at the moon. You and Estrid are left staring at the back of their heads in a stunned silence. It's clear you'll get nothing out of either of them. Come on. Hoping Estrid will choose to follow behind you of her own accord, you head back up the door. It's too late, though. The doom and gloom has already reached across the quarters from Orville and infected you, and that dread he spoke of is wrapping its knuckles around your head and heart as well. You wish it was already over, but you know in the deepest recess of your soul that the hardest part is about to begin. Phew! Alright, let's save in. Oh my goodness. I may have to call it early again just because of all the reading. That hurts my throat. Ah.